Joining us now is a ranking member of House Oversight. He's Congressman James Comer. Congressman, if the GOP, it's good to see you. If the GOP takes back control of Congress, you're going to use subpoena powers to probe the failure of what happened in Afghanistan? And who are you going to subpoena?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you're reporting on this right now, Liz, because on the one-year anniversary, we still don't have any answers to the questions that every American wants to know about the debacle in Afghanistan. And that's number one, how much military equipment did we leave behind? And number two, how many Americans did we leave behind? The State Department underestimated by far, by amounts that we don't even know how many Americans were over there. And another problem, Liz, is we've probably transported close to 100,000 Afghanis to the United States. That was way more than the State Department estimated. Were these people vetted? And where are they now?
So who do you want to subpoena?
The American people deserve answers.
Who would you subpoena to testify?
This would be Blinken. This is all Secretary Blinken. You know, the military equipment failure, that's on the military. That's the Secretary of Defense. But the stranded Americans and all the Afghanis who came over here who we don't know anything about. We've requested information. Were these people properly vetted? Yeah. And we don't have any answers.
You know, the British Parliament, by the way, condemned this, right? Tony Blair, former Prime Minister, said Biden's actions were, quote, imbecilic. The president ran Senate Foreign Relations while senator. He's been around since Nixon. Presidencies since the 90s warned careful planning was needed. This is dangerous if you're going to leave Afghanistan. Biden's team did not make key decisions about evacuations just hours before Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, and the U.S. Embassy in Kabul only asked for military assistance just 4 days before the Taliban took over. What was going on there? It's like lack of preparation, it seemed like.
It's a huge lack of preparation. This is the biggest military failure in my adult lifetime. And now you look at where we are today on the global stage. Russia's invaded Ukraine. China's threatening to invade Taiwan. This is all a direct result of Biden's failure in Afghanistan. I mean, the American people wanted the military out of Afghanistan. I wanted the military out of Afghanistan. But to not have a plan and to not have a full accounting of how many people were over there that needed to be transported to the United States, that's a huge failure on Joe Biden and Secretary Blinken.
Yeah, you know, so the president said al-Qaeda was gone. It wasn't gone. Afghanistan has once more become a terrorist safe haven, evidenced by the recent drone strike of al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri in Kabul. You know, we're going to show this. A State Department spokesman claiming it was a success, but you're going to see the pushback. Watch.
Ending the longest war in American history was never going to be easy. But 1 year later, we are in a stronger position as a country because of the president's decision.
The White House seemed to have this rosy picture that everything was fine, that we're not going to have helicopters off the top of the embassy like Vietnam, which is exactly what happened.
The U.S. Congress several months ago approved the creation of a commission to try and figure out what happened in Afghanistan, what went wrong, not just at the end, and certainly the Biden administration owns the failures of the evacuation.
So the State Department is saying we're in a stronger position now than we were a year ago. Is that true?
No, that is absolutely false. Russia never would have done what they did in Ukraine, and China wouldn't be threatening to do what they're threatening to do in Taiwan had the United States shown some type of leadership, some type of organization in Afghanistan. It showed weakness by our military, weakness by our commander-in-chief, and we're paying the price today.
Complete chaotic disarray is what we're hearing out of the Pentagon. They also found that the White House, the House GOP found the White House turned down the Taliban offer to let the U.S. do its own security for the Kabul airport, and that set the stage for the ensuing chaos unfolding just outside the gates, little security, bombing that killed 13 U.S. troops. Those families are suffering. We lost soldiers there. Only 36 consular officers on the ground to process more than 100,000 evacuees. This is shocking. This is probably the worst military blunder in modern U.S. history. I shouldn't say military. It's a White House blunder.
It is a White House blunder. It is a military blunder. But the State Department underestimated how many people there were to evacuate. They had nowhere near the correct accounting of how many people were over there. That's on the State Department.
How does a president who's been around since Nixon, how does a president who led Senate Foreign Relations, How does this happen under President Biden? That's the mystery. What happened?
I don't have any idea. I think he got bad intelligence, which we know our intelligence community is not on the top of its game and hasn't been for a long time. He was certain that the government that we funded and trained for the past 20 years would fight back. We saw they never fired a shot. He trusted President Ghani, who took 169 million American tax dollars and fled to Dubai. And by the way, President Biden hasn't done anything to try to retrieve that money or hold the former president of Afghanistan accountable. Plus, the State Department grossly underestimated the number of people there. And then the military had no idea what to do. It was almost like the military was afraid of the Taliban. We have the strongest, best funded military in the world. And you know, we got outflanked by a bunch of guys with flip-flops and Vietnam era rifles. It should never happen. And we're paying the price today in Ukraine and in Taiwan.
Congressman Comer, thanks for joining us tonight. It's good to see you.